Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 12. So this week we are going to be kind of starting our research paper in earnest. And so what I want you to start doing this week is getting sources and starting to describe the different, the conspiracy theory and the official kind of sides of the story for this paper, okay? And it's a good place to start because I want you to feel like you have like a pretty good basic understanding of both of these before we start moving into all of the details and everything when we have to start making our arguments. So what we're going to do first is I want you to get two primary sources for this project, okay? And we're doing primary sources for this. Look, primary sources sometimes are not like the easiest sources to work with. They're not necessarily the easiest sources to find, okay? And so I just want to make sure you know the reason that we're doing this. The reason we're doing it is because it's really important to make sure that we're representing both sides of this argument fairly, to make sure that we could make a good case, right? And so if anybody starts to suspect that you haven't really listened to either side of the argument, it's going to make them less likely to want to listen to your argument in the first place, okay? So what we want to do is we want to find one primary source from the official side of the story, okay? This is going to be what, for example, if you're doing like a political conspiracy theory, your primary source is probably going to be something like a government website that's describing the situation. It could be documents from like a congressional hearing. Like, let's say if you're doing like the JFK assassination, they just released new documents, right, from the FBI about that assassination. If you're going to do something that's like a celebrity conspiracy theory, this could even be something on social media from that celebrity. It could be an interview with that celebrity that's been published online, like a video. And so it's going to kind of depend on the type of conspiracy theory that you're looking at. And if anybody has any kind of questions about what would be a good primary source, please let me know. I'll be responding to this assignment to give you some feedback and make sure you're on the right track, okay? The other source that you want to have is a primary source that's from the perspective of somebody who believes in this conspiracy theory, okay? And this is inherently, I'm telling you to look at sources that are inherently not reliable, okay? And so I know some students have a lot of like kind of almost like a repulsion to this side of the assignment, but it's really important to make sure that we are listening to people before we make an argument saying that they're wrong, okay? And so the point of this assignment is to argue against a conspiracy theory. It's really important to make sure we listen to what the people who believe in this conspiracy have to say before we get started talking about why they're wrong, okay? You'd have to do it if you're a lawyer, for example. So you want to find somebody who believes in that. I think the best place to probably go is going to be social media. You can find something on like a Reddit post. There's still going to be, there's some sorts of like regulations on some sites, although I think they're lessening them. And so you might be able to find something on like, Reddit, X, TikTok. They have less regulations than they used to about people sharing conspiracy theories. So it might be easier to find. And you can also find conspiracy theories from some like media personalities who maybe are kind of known for sharing conspiracy theories or kind of even promoting conspiracy theories. Okay. And so, yeah, so you're going to be going looking for that from somebody who is sharing a conspiracy theory to inform other people or persuade other people to believe this conspiracy theory with them. Okay, not a reporting of someone, so like if you read it in a newspaper or something and they're saying this person believes in this conspiracy theory, why would they believe that? Then you know that you're looking at a secondary source because they are an intermediary. They're telling you what someone else thinks. Okay, and they're going to be trying to be unbiased probably. So you're looking for bias. You want them to be biased. Okay, because you're going to be unbiased. All right. So once you have that, I just want you to share two links, one from each of the primary sources, or you can go ahead and share the full citation if you want to just go ahead and get a step ahead in this project. Okay. And then I'm going to just give you some feedback to let you know if you're on the right track. If you're a little bit confused about what a primary source is, I also shared this video down here that'll give you an idea with some more examples of things that you could look for. Our other assignment this week is going to be writing summaries for our official and conspiracy sides. And what I'm hoping you'll be able to do is use those primary sources that you found to really help inform you. It's great if you can include like a quote from them, especially to show people who might believe in the conspiracy theory or the official side of the story that you've listened to the people who are actually espousing that, right? Like they are saying this is the real truth. If you can quote those people, then that's going to help show that you've really listened to both sides. And so this will be great. You can also use reference sources, other kinds of sources for this. So don't feel like you have to only use primary sources. I just like you to include them here if possible. And then we're going to have a peer review at the end of the week. I have a lot of advice down here about how to do this. I can get into more detail. But basically, it's the same kind of stuff that you would include with like your presentation, and that we also did with the summary paragraph in the in the contextual analysis assignment. Things like timelines, people involved, definitions of terms. Those are the kinds of things here. But you want to do like a kind of skimming the surface overview at this point. We're not going to get into all the details of the conspiracy theory until we start getting into the debunking sections, okay? And that's when we'll say, okay, here's a major piece of evidence that they use, and here's what the problem is with that piece of evidence. Okay, so that's when you're going to get into more of the details. All right, so the beginning is just going to be a basic summary, maybe one paragraph each of each side. And by the way, it's okay if you don't, if you're not at a real drafting stage yet, this is early in the project still, you can always do like an outline, like a detailed outline, or like even just like a list of the things you're going to include. And then we are going to have a peer review that's due at the end of the week. What I want you to do when you're looking at this for peer review is to think, do I feel like I have like a pretty good understanding of both sides? And if not, is there any information that I feel like I need? Like maybe I need more information about who's involved, or like when did this happen, or like, that kind of thing. And then if you're noticing any bias in like the language or the presentation of evidence, and that's another thing that you could point out, you could say, ooh, I think there's like a better word for this that might be like less biased sounding. Those are going to be the two things that I'm really going to be grading on for this paper. And so I think once we have a good feeling like, okay, we've got this set, now we're ready to move on, we can start getting into all of our evidence that we're going to use to build our arguments. Okay, so that's our assignments for this week. Please reach out if you have any questions or if you'd like any help looking for different sources. I'm definitely here to help. All right, I hope you have a great week.